Chapter 1. Shadows of the outcast. Scarlett Hayes stepped off the train and into the crisp evening air of the city. Her suitcase rolled smoothly over the cobblestone street as she tried to steady her nerves. This was supposed to be just another temporary assignment, another chance to prove herself in the high-paced world of event planning. Yet something about this city felt different, heavier, as if secrets lingered behind every shadowed alley. She made her way to the grand estate of the Moretti family, a name she had heard whispered in both admiration and fear. The mansion loomed before her, all marble columns and ornate iron gates. The guards at the entrance barely glanced at her, allowing her passage with the faintest nod. Scarlett knew that a family this powerful did not tolerate mistakes, and the thought made her stomach tighten inside. The opulence was overwhelming. Crystal chandeliers sparkled like captured stars, and the scent of fresh flowers mingled with the faint undertone of expensive cologne. Scarlett's eyes wandered in awe before settling on a figure leaning casually against the staircase railing. His presence seemed almost magnetic, drawing attention even without a word. Adrian Moretti, the black sheep of the family, the man everyone warned her about. His dark hair fell carelessly over his forehead, and his eyes, a striking shade of stormy grey, held a flicker of mischief that unsettled her. He smirked as if he knew exactly the effect he had on everyone in the room, and Scarlett could not deny the sudden rush of something unfamiliar stirring inside her. He stepped down the staircase toward her, every movement confident and precise. Scarlett straightened her posture and reminded herself to be professional, though her pulse betrayed her calm demeanor. "New girl," he said, his voice low and teasing. "I was wondering when someone interesting would arrive." Scarlett blinked, caught off guard by the directness of his gaze. "I am not here to entertain you," she replied carefully, trying to keep her tone neutral. Adrian chuckled softly, a sound that sent an unexpected warmth through her chest. "I never said you were. I just thought introductions were in order." Their brief exchange set the tone for the evening. Scarlett worked diligently, arranging flowers and coordinating the staff, while Adrian occasionally appeared at her side, offering commentary that was half flirtation, half challenge. She felt the weight of his scrutiny, yet behind the teasing, she sensed a vulnerability that most overlooked. By the end of the night, Scarlett felt both exhausted and exhilarated. She had survived her first encounter with the notorious black sheep, and to her surprise, she wanted more. As she packed her things in the quiet of the now empty estate, she could not shake the feeling that her life had just shifted in a way she could not yet understand. Adrian Moretti was more than a reputation. He was a puzzle, dangerous yet magnetic, and Scarlett knew she was already drawn into a world she could not easily leave. Chapter 2. Unlikely encounters. Next morning, Scarlett awoke to the soft light of dawn filtering through the tall windows of her small rented apartment. Her mind replayed the events of the previous evening. Adrian Moretti had been impossibly infuriating and strangely captivating all at once. She shook her head, trying to push away the flutter in her chest, but the memory of his grey eyes lingered stubbornly. Her first task for the day was to finalize arrangements for a family gathering at the Moretti estate. She arrived early, hoping to familiarize herself with the space before the chaos began. The mansion looked different in the daylight. The grandeur was still undeniable, but the morning sun softened the intimidating edges, and Scarlett felt slightly more at ease navigating the polished halls. It did not take long before she ran into Adrian again. He was leaning against the doorway to the main hall, arms crossed, wearing a casual expression that made him look effortless even as he surveyed the staff with a critical eye. "Back so soon?" he remarked, his tone teasing but not unkind. "I thought you might run the other way after yesterday." Scarlett raised an eyebrow. "I am here to work, not to follow your whims," he smirked, his gaze lingering a moment too long. "Good, I like a challenge." Their encounter was interrupted by a commotion near the kitchen. A tray of glasses had tipped over, spilling water across the marble floor. Without thinking, Scarlett dashed forward to prevent a staff member from slipping. Adrian was right there beside her, surprisingly quick to help, steadying her hand as she balanced the glasses. "Not bad," he said softly, his usual playful tone replaced with something gentler. "You have quick reflexes." Scarlett felt a warmth she did not expect at his compliment. "I try," she replied, brushing her hair back from her face. She realized then that Adrian's teasing was not all arrogance. There was care behind it, a subtle acknowledgement that she mattered, even in a family that often overlooked others. As the morning progressed, Adrian found himself observing Scarlett more than he intended. He was used to people fearing him or keeping their distance, but she treated him if he was simply another person. Her curiosity was sharp, her reactions genuine, and he found himself drawn to her resilience. By midday, a quiet understanding had begun to form between them. Words were few, but their interactions carried an unspoken acknowledgement of mutual respect. Scarlett, for her part, noticed the cracks in Adrian's otherwise confident demeanor. A brief shadow would cross his face when no one was looking, hints of something deeper hidden beneath the surface. As she left the estate later that afternoon, Scarlett could not deny a growing sense of connection to the man who was supposed to be untouchable. Adrian Moretti was infuriating and magnetic, dangerous and vulnerable all at once, and Scarlett Hayes was beginning to realize that the line between curiosity and desire was thinner than she ever imagined. Chapter 3. Secrets in the Dark. Evening air was heavy with the scent of rain when Scarlett returned to the Moretti estate for another late meeting. The family gathering had gone smoothly, but there were lingering details that needed attention. She carried her notebook tightly against her chest, her steps echoing softly across the polished marble floors. Adrian was already there, leaning against the grand staircase, eyes darkened with something she could not yet name. He greeted her with a faint nod, an unspoken acknowledgement that tonight their paths would cross again. Scarlett felt a familiar tension coil in her stomach as she approached him. "You stayed late last night," she remarked, trying to sound casual. "Most people would have left hours ago." Adrian's lips curved into a shadow of a smile. "Some of us have responsibilities," he said quietly. Then, after a pause, he added, "and some of us enjoy company." Scarlett blinked, unsure how to respond. There was a sincerity in his voice that unsettled her, a vulnerability that contradicted the confident, teasing man she had seen before. Later, while reviewing the event plans in the quiet library, Scarlett heard the faint sound of footsteps behind her. She turned to see Adrian standing there, hands in his pockets, his usual swagger replaced by something softer. "You do this too well," he murmured, nodding toward the papers in her hands. "I suppose it is no wonder you handle everything so calmly under pressure." Scarlett hesitated before speaking, sensing that he wanted more than small talk. "I do what I can," she replied, "but I suppose everyone has their reasons for being who they are." His eyes darkened, and for the first time, Scarlett saw a flicker of something raw and unguarded. "You do not know me," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Not really." Her curiosity overcame her caution. "Try me," she whispered, surprising herself with the words. Adrian looked at her for a long moment before lowering himself into the chair across from her. The weight of the room seemed to press in as he began to speak. He told her about the choices that had led him to be labeled the family's black sheep, about nights filled with reckless decisions and moments he regretted deeply. He spoke of loneliness, of feeling like an outsider even among his own blood, and of the constant pressure to live up to expectations he could not meet. Scarlett listened, captivated by the honesty in his voice. The man she had assumed was arrogant and untouchable revealed a fragility that no one else seemed to notice. She realized that the rumors and warnings she had heard were only part of the truth. Adrian Moretti was not simply a troublemaker. He was a young man searching for connection, for someone who could see past his mistakes and understand him. When he finished, the silence between them was profound. Scarlett's chest tightened with empathy and a hint of something more. "I think I understand," she said softly. "Maybe more than anyone else has." Adrian's eyes met hers, and for a fleeting moment, the walls he had built around himself seemed to crumble. "Maybe," he whispered, almost uncertainly. "Maybe you do." As Scarlett left the library that night, she felt a shift within herself. The man who had seemed dangerous and untouchable was becoming someone she wanted to know, someone she wanted to reach, and she knew, without fully realizing it yet, that Adrian Moretti had just become a part of her world in a way that would not be easily undone. Chapter 4. Tangled Loyalty. Scarlett walked through the grand halls of the Moretti estate, her footsteps echoing softly against the marble floors. Every corner seemed to hold a secret, every shadow a memory of the family's long and complicated history. She had begun to feel a strange sense of belonging here, yet she also sensed the constant tension that ran just beneath the surface. Adrian appeared suddenly, leaning casually against a doorway as if he had been waiting for her. His presence brought with it a mixture of comfort and unease. "You look like you are walking into a trap," he said, his tone teasing but edged with concern. Scarlett frowned. "I am just trying to understand this family and how everything works. It is not a trap, though it can feel like one sometimes." Adrian studied her for a moment, the corners of his mouth twitching. "Be careful," he warned. "Not everyone here has your best interests at heart." Later that evening, Scarlett found herself caught in a conversation with members of the Moretti family she had not yet met. Their polite smiles barely hid the sharp glances and subtle judgments aimed at Adrian and, by extension, at her for being near him. The whispers of disapproval reminded her that Adrian's reputation of the black sheep was more than just rumor. Before she could retreat to safety, a sudden commotion erupted outside the estate. A rival family, known for a stirring conflict with the Morettis, had made their presence known. Security guards rushed past her, tension thick in the air. Scarlett's heart pounded as she realized the danger she had unknowingly stepped into. Adrian appeared beside her instantly, his hand brushing against hers as he guided her toward a safer area. "Stay close," he instructed, his voice low but firm. "I will keep you safe." As they moved through the corridors, Scarlett noticed a new side of Adrian. The playfulness was gone, replaced by a sharp focus and determination that made her realize just how skilled he was in handling danger. He was not just a reckless black sheep. He was resourceful and protective, willing to put himself at risk for those he cared about. Once the immediate threat passed, Scarlett felt a mixture of relief and admiration. "You handled that well," she said quietly. Adrian shrugged, though a faint smile played at his lips. "It is part of the life I lead," he said. "You do not choose it, but you survive it. And sometimes, you find people worth protecting." Their eyes met, and in that moment, Scarlett felt the bond between them deepen. It was no longer just curiosity or attraction. It was trust and reliance, born from shared danger and unspoken understanding. She knew that her growing connection to Adrian was more complicated than she had anticipated, yet she could not deny the pull she felt toward him. As Scarlett left the estate that night, the weight of the family's expectations and rival threats lingered in her mind. She understood now that being close to Adrian meant navigating a web of loyalties and dangers, yet a part of her was willing to step into that world, ready to face whatever came next alongside him. Chapter 5. Forbidden moments. The evening had fallen softly over the Moretti estate, the kind of night that made the world seem quieter and more intimate. Scarlett found herself lingering in the garden, the scent of blooming jasmine drifting in the warm air. Her fingers traced the edge of her notebook absently, but her thoughts were far from work. Adrian appeared from the shadows, his presence as magnetic as ever. He leaned casually against the stone fountain, but the usual teasing glint in his eyes was tempered by something gentler, more vulnerable. Scarlett felt her chest tighten at the sight of him. "You seem restless," he remarked softly. "Or is that just an excuse to wander alone?" Scarlett met his gaze, her own feelings mirrored in his stormy eyes. "I like the quiet," she admitted. "It helps me think." He stepped closer, just close enough that the warmth radiating from him brushed against her skin. "Quiet can be dangerous in a place like this," he murmured, "especially when someone like me is around." Scarlett's breath caught. There was a thrill in the danger he implied, a tension she could not ignore. Yet beneath it, she sensed the tenderness he was carefully hiding. "You are not as untouchable as everyone thinks," she said quietly, her voice betraying her emotions. Adrian's expression softened, and for a moment, he looked like the man she had glimpsed in the library weeks ago, the one capable of feeling deeply, despite the hardened exterior. "Maybe," he whispered, "maybe I am just waiting for someone who sees the real me." Their conversation lingered in the night air, charged with an intimacy they had allowed before. Adrian reached out, brushing a stray strand of hair from Scarlett's face. The touch was light, but deliberate, igniting a warmth that spread through her chest. She felt drawn to him, helplessly, yet acutely aware of the dangers that came with getting close. Scarlett swallowed hard. "Adrian, you are complicated," she admitted, "and being near you is risky." He smiled softly, a rare, unguarded smile. "Maybe the best things in life are worth the risk," he said, his voice low and sincere. For the first time, Scarlett let herself feel without restraint. She stepped closer, closing the space between them, their eyes locked in silent acknowledgement of the bond that had formed. The garden seemed to shrink around them, leaving only the two of them in a fragile moment of connection. Yet even as their hands brushed and hearts raced, Scarlett could not ignore the world waiting beyond the estate gates, the family expectations, the rivalries, and the dangers that lingered in the shadows. Loving Adrian was tempting, irresistible even, but she knew that giving in completely meant stepping into a life filled with uncertainty. Still, for that stolen moment beneath the moonlight, all cautions faded. Scarlett and Adrian allowed themselves to simply be, their closeness hinting at the deepening emotions that neither could deny. Chapter 6. Shadows of the past. Scarlett could still feel the warmth of the stolen moments she had shared with Adrian, but that warmth was quickly overshadowed by the unease creeping into her thoughts. She had glimpsed the man behind the black sheep reputation, but she had yet to see the full weight of his past. The tension began that afternoon when a familiar name surfaced in the news. An old associate of Adrian's, someone linked to one of his more reckless escapades, had been arrested, and whispers of his involvement reached the Moretti estate. Scarlett felt a knot tighten in her stomach. She had known that Adrian's history was complicated, but seeing the consequences of it now made the danger tangible. She found Adrian in the library again, the quiet place that had become their refuge. He looked up from the papers he was reviewing, his usual smirk absent. His grey eyes were shadowed with regret and frustration. "There's stirring trouble again," he said quietly, almost to himself. "Old mistakes have a way of finding you." Scarlett stepped closer, her concern outweighing her caution. "What do you mean? Are you in danger?" Adrian ran a hand through his hair, his jaw tight. "Not just me," he admitted. "Anyone close to me is affected. I wanted to shield you from this, but some things you cannot escape." The vulnerability in his voice sent a shiver through Scarlett. She reached out and touched his arm lightly, grounding him. "We are in this together," she said firmly. "Whatever comes, we face it side by side." Adrian's gaze met hers, and for a moment, the walls he had built around himself wavered. "I should not have let you get involved," he said softly. "I am dangerous, Scarlett. You deserve someone safer." Scarlett shook her head, her resolve clear. "I do not want safe. I want you, all of you, even the parts you think are too dark." That night, as the estate grew quiet, Adrian finally shared more of his past, the nights of reckless choices, the people he had hurt, and the mistakes that had cemented his black sheep reputation. Scarlett listened without judgment, absorbing each word and seeing the full complexity of the man. She was falling for Dot by the time the fire in the hearth had burned low. A fragile understanding had formed between them. Adrian realized that Scarlett's willingness to accept him entirely was rare, perhaps even impossible to come by, and Scarlett understood that loving him meant embracing all parts of his life, including the shadows that lingered there. Dot, as she left the library that night, Scarlett felt both the weight of the past and the pull of the future. Loving Adrian was no longer just about attraction or curiosity. It was about trust, courage, and the willingness to face whatever darkness life threw at them together. Chapter 7. Heart's confession. The estate was quiet that evening, the soft glow of lamps casting golden reflections across the marble floors. Scarlett walked through the halls with a sense of anticipation she could not quite name. She knew Adrian would be there, and despite the tension that had lingered over the past days, she felt drawn to him with a force she could no longer ignore. Adrian appeared around the corner, his posture relaxed but his eyes serious. The playful teasing that had marked their first encounters was absent, replaced by a raw intensity that made Scarlett's pulse quicken. "Scarlett," he began, his voice low and deliberate. "We need to talk," she nodded, sensing that what he had to say would change everything. They moved to a quiet balcony overlooking the city, the night air cool against their skin. The sounds of the city below were distant, almost as if the world had narrowed to just the two of them. "I cannot keep pretending," Adrian said, his eyes locking with hers, "pretending that my past does not matter, that my life is not complicated, and I cannot pretend that you are just someone I met through work." Scarlett felt her breath catch. She had sensed a growing connection between them, but hearing him voice it aloud made her heart ache with longing. "Adrian," she whispered, "what are you trying to say?" He stepped closer, the space between them charged with unspoken emotion. "I love you," he confessed, the words simple yet heavy with meaning. "I have tried to fight it, to keep you safe from me, but I cannot. I care for you more than I ever thought possible, and I cannot hide it anymore." Scarlett's chest tightened as the words sank in. Her heart had been leaning toward this truth for weeks, but hearing it from him was both overwhelming and exhilarating. "I love you too," she admitted, her voice trembling slightly. "I have from the moment I realized there was more to you than what everyone else sees." A sense of relief and vulnerability washed over Adrian. He reached for her hand, intertwining their fingers. The touch was electric, a silent promise of trust and commitment. For the first time, the walls they had both built around their hearts seemed to crumble, leaving only the raw, honest connection between them. They stayed on the balcony long into the night, talking quietly, sharing fears and hopes, and allowing themselves to simply be together. It was a confession that changed everything, a turning point where curiosity and attraction became love and devotion. By the time the first light of dawn crept over the horizon, Scarlett knew that their relationship had reached a new depth. Loving Adrian meant accepting the danger and the past, but it also meant embracing the possibility of happiness that neither of them had thought possible. And for the first time, both felt that perhaps they could face the world together, unafraid. Chapter 8. Danger and devotion. Tension in the Moretti estate had been growing all week. Rumors of a rival family making a move had reached Adrian's ears, and the usually controlled atmosphere of the mansion felt charged with unease. Scarlett noticed it immediately, the subtle glances, the hurried whispers, the way Adrian's jaw tightened whenever anyone mentioned security. That evening, Scarlett was walking through the garden when the first sign of trouble arrived. Shadows moved along the estate walls, and she instinctively froze. Before she could react, Adrian was at her side, his hand firm around her arm. "Stay behind me," he instructed, his voice low and urgent. "Do exactly as I say." Scarlett's heart pounded as he led her through the estate, weaving between corridors and side doors, each step measured and precise. She had seen glimpses of Adrian's calm in moments of tension before, but now she realized just how skilled he was at navigating danger. A sudden crash echoed from the main hall, followed by raised voices and the unmistakable sound of a scuffle. Adrian pulled Scarlett into a hidden alcove, shielding her with his body. "Do not move," he whispered, his eyes scanning the shadows. They watched as several masked intruders stormed the estate, clearly intent on confrontation. Adrian's hands were steady, his focus unwavering. Despite the danger, Scarlett felt a strange comfort in his presence. He was her anchor, protecting her even in the most perilous moments. The confrontation did not last long, but it was intense. Adrian moved with lethal precision, neutralizing threats while ensuring Scarlett remained safe. She was in awe of his courage and skill, seeing firsthand why he had earned both fear and respect within his family and the criminal underworld. When the last intruder had fled and the estate settled into an uneasy calm, Scarlett finally allowed herself to breathe. "You saved us," she said softly, her voice shaking from adrenaline. Adrian turned to her, his stony grey eyes softened by the faintest trace of a smile. "I promised I would protect you," he said simply. "Nothing will come between us, if I can help it." Scarlett felt tears prick at the corners of her eyes. The danger they had faced together had solidified something deeper between them: trust, reliance, and devotion. It was no longer just a matter of attraction. Their bond had been tested, and they had emerged stronger. As they stood together in the quiet of the estate garden, Scarlett knew that whatever challenges lay ahead, she and Adrian would face them as a team. Love had made them vulnerable, but it had also made them stronger, and she trusted that their connection could endure even the darkest of storms. Chapter 9. Redemption and Forgiveness. The early morning light cast a pale glow over the Moretti estate, illuminating the calm after the storm. The attack from the rival family had left its mark, but the danger had passed, leaving Adrian with a sense of clarity he had not felt in years. He knew that the only way forward was to face the past he had tried to outrun and seek the redemption that had always eluded him. Scarlett found him in the study, surrounded by papers and family records. He looked different this morning, determined, focused, and yet carrying a quiet vulnerability that only she had ever witnessed. "I have to make things right," he said without looking up. "Not just for me, but for everyone I care about." Scarlett stepped closer, placing a reassuring hand on his shoulder. "You are not alone in this," she said softly. "I am with you, every step of the way." Adrian finally looked at her, his grey eyes reflecting both gratitude and love. "I do not deserve someone like you," he murmured. "After everything, after all the mistakes, you should walk away." Scarlett shook her head, her voice firm. "I choose to stay. I see who you are, Adrian. Not just the black sheep, not just the mistakes, but the man who is capable of change and who loves fiercely. I am here because I believe in you." The conversation marked a turning point. Adrian began reaching out to family members he had distanced himself from, confronting the misunderstandings and regrets that had defined his black sheep status. He took responsibility for past actions, apologizing where necessary and demonstrating that he had grown into someone capable of both loyalty and honor. Throughout the process, Scarlett remained at his side, offering encouragement and understanding. She saw the toll it took on him, the weight of years of guilt and mistrust, but she also saw his determination to make amends. In her presence, Adrian found the courage to face his past without fear. Knowing that he was not alone. By the end of the week, the estate felt lighter. Conversations that had been tense and strained were replaced with cautious acceptance. Adrian's family began to see him not only as the black sheep but as a man who had learned from his mistakes and who was willing to fight for the people he loved. As Scarlett watched him from the balcony that evening, Adrian turned and caught her gaze. There was a softness in his eyes, a quiet peace that had been absent for far too long. He smiled, and in that moment, Scarlett knew that redemption was not just about correcting the past. It was about finding someone who believed in you, someone who would stand by your side no matter the shadows you carried. Their hands met, fingers entwined, and together they stood in the glow of the setting sun, ready to embrace a future built on forgiveness, trust, and the enduring strength of their love. Chapter 10. A future together. The state was calm under the golden light of late afternoon, the chaos of the past weeks finally behind them. Scarlett walked through the gardens, the flowers swaying gently in the breeze, and for the first time in a long while, she felt a sense of peace. The dangers, the rivalries, and the shadows of Adrian's past no longer loomed as they once had. Adrian approached from the veranda, his smile warm and genuine. There was a lightness in his step that had been absent for years, a sense of hope reflected in the calm grey of his eyes. He reached for Scarlett's hand, his touch familiar and reassuring. "We made it," he said simply, as if summarizing all the trials and moments they had endured together. Scarlett smiled, squeezing his hand. "We did, together." They walked side by side through the gardens, speaking quietly about the future plans for the estate, their work, and most importantly, their lives intertwined. For the first time, Scarlett could envision a life with Adrian that was not overshadowed by fear or danger. It was a life filled with trust, love, and the promise of new beginnings. Adrian paused beneath the archway of climbing roses, turning to face her. "Scarlett," he said, his voice filled with sincerity, "I know my past will always be a part of me, but I want to spend every day proving that the best of me is who I am with you. Will you stay by my side? Not just today, but for all the tomorrows to come." Tears pricked at the corners of Scarlett's eyes. She had seen the darkness he had carried, felt the weight of the risks, and yet here he stood, offering a future built on love and trust. "Yes," she whispered, "I will stay. Every day, through everything." Adrian pulled her into a gentle embrace, their foreheads resting together as the world seemed to fade around them. For the first time, they did not have to hide their feelings or their devotion. The black sheep of the Moretti family had found not only love but acceptance, and Scarlett had found a place where her heart could rest. As the sun dipped below the horizon, painting the sky in shades of gold and rose, Scarlett and Adrian walked back toward the estate hand in hand. Their laughter mingled with the evening air, a sound that spoke of hope, trust, and the promise of a life together. In that moment, the past and the danger felt far away. All that remained was love, unshakable and true, and the knowledge that even the most broken or misunderstood hearts could find their place, their family, and their happiness.